Today, we're diving into a really revolutionary mindset. It's the story of a scientist who completely changed our understanding of life itself. And she didn't do it by just imagining an answer. She did it by building a system so incredibly precise it could reveal a truth that no one had ever seen before. This is the Franklin framework.
This one sentence, this right here, captures the defining moment for Rosalind Franklin, and it's where we're going to start. Just try to imagine the vibe back in 1952. The whole world is in this frantic race to solve the ultimate puzzle. What is the structure of DNA? The molecule of life itself. Over at Cambridge, you've got Watson and Crick, these brilliant theorists, and they're literally building models with their hands, trying to imagine how the pieces fit. Theirs is a race of intuition, of ambition. But miles away at King's College London, Franklin has this totally different realization. She gets that imagination, in this case, is actually a trap. The way forward isn't more theory, it's technology. It's evidence. She had to stop guessing what life looked like and literally build a camera that was precise enough to take its picture.
So, here's the journey we're about to take together. We'll kick things off with that critical moment of insight, seeing the invisible. Then we're going to rewind a bit to understand the background that forged her fortress of logic. After that, we'll dive deep into her core philosophy, that the data is master, and break down the actual system she used to weaponize precision. We'll get to witness the incredible breakthrough that revealed the blueprint of life. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see the big takeaway for us, how your evidence is literally the code for your greatness.
Okay, let's start at King's College in London. The atmosphere here is just thick with this post-war ambition. It's basically intellectual combat. Franklin arrives, and she's a world-class expert in X-ray crystallography. She thinks she's been hired to lead the DNA research. But because of a miscommunication, her colleague Maurice Wilkins thinks she's his assistant. Right from the jump, this friction sets the stage. She is immediately an outsider in this super-competitive, male-dominated world of British science, a world that saw her not as a peer, but as a technician. But here's the thing. Franklin had a clarity her colleagues just didn't. She knew the answer wasn't going to be found in those stuffy senior common rooms where she wasn't even allowed. Nope. It was going to be found in the radiation coming from her X-ray machine.
What's so fascinating here is the fundamental difference in approach. The ball and stick models, that's an exercise in synthesis. You're combining known chemical rules with a whole lot of educated guesswork to create a shape that seems plausible. It's a top-down approach. Franklin's method? The complete opposite. She was basically practicing a form of molecular anatomy. Instead of building a model of what DNA could be, she was systematically dissecting the molecule with X-rays to reveal what it actually was. Her process was all about analysis, not synthesis. And yeah, it was slow. It was painstaking. It required incredible patience. This wasn't a race to be first with a guess. It was a methodical march toward an undeniable fact. And out of this methodical process, her framework emerges. The Franklin framework is so much more than a scientific technique. It's really a philosophy of power. She understood instinctively that in a world that might deny you status or credit or even a seat at the table, there is one form of authority that is absolute: the authority of irrefutable data. Her framework is built on this belief that your obsession with detail, your demand for precision, your willingness to do the slow, hard work that other people avoid, these are not just character quirks. They are your most strategic, most powerful, most lethal weapons. But this conviction, it wasn't born in the lab. It was forged much, much earlier, in a lifetime of quiet resistance. To really get the scientist, you have to understand the person. Before she was called the Dark Lady of DNA by her detractors, Rosalind Franklin was a young woman in London, fighting for her own intellectual sovereignty. She was born into this prominent Anglo-Jewish family that valued education, sure, but also held really traditional views about a woman's place in the world. In fact, her own father initially refused to pay for her university education. He wanted her to pursue social work instead. It was a world that had a very clear, very safe path laid out for her, and that path definitely did not lead to a laboratory.
And this slide just lays out the fundamental conflict of her entire life, doesn't it? Society expected her to get her identity from other people, to be a daughter, a wife, an assistant. It offered her the safety of a defined domestic role in exchange for her intellectual ambition. But Franklin's internal reality was this relentless intellectual hunger. From a young age, she demanded proof. She needed quantitative clarity. The whole world of social niceties and unspoken rules just felt arbitrary and illogical to her. She craved the pure, unassailable logic of the physical world. For her, the safety the world is offering,
well, it was a cage. And the only escape was through the rigorous application of her own mind. So when she shows up at King's College and gets that cold shoulder, denied access to the senior common room, treated like a subordinate, it wasn't a new kind of battle for her. It was just a new battlefield. But instead of letting this professional isolation defeat her, she actually weaponized it. It became her forge. In the quiet solitude of her lab, she was forced into the state of extreme self-reliance. Without trusted colleagues to collaborate with, her only partner became the data. Her only ally was the evidence emerging from her machine. And it was in this forge that she built an internal fortress, not out of emotion or ambition, but of pure empirical logic. She learned that seeking approval was a strategic mistake. The only thing that mattered was the approval of reality itself.
So this intense background, this lifelong fight for her own intellectual freedom, it gave birth to this powerful and totally uncompromising philosophy. And it wasn't just a set of academic principles, it was a complete operating system for her scientific life. It was a mindset designed to protect her from all the biases and shortcuts of the world around her, letting her focus on the one thing she knew she could trust completely.
This became her mantra, just 5 simple words that guided every single decision she made. While her contemporaries were in this frantic race for glory, taking intuitive leaps and cutting corners, Franklin anchored herself to this one absolute principle. The data, and only the data, would tell her where to go next. She would not impose her own theories onto the evidence. She would wait for the evidence to give her the theory. Now, this was a radical rejection of the entire culture of science at the time, which so often celebrated the grand, imaginative leap over slow, methodical observation. And this led to the first pillar of her mindset, molecular integrity. See, Franklin understood something fundamental about power that others just missed. Every single time you guess, every time you take a shortcut because you're in a hurry, you are giving up your authority. You're creating a weakness in your argument that someone else can exploit. You're building your castle on sand. True, lasting power, she believed, comes from the difficult, disciplined work of building an evidence-based case that is so solid, so internally consistent, that it becomes undeniable. Molecular integrity is the belief that your work has to be as sound and structured as the molecules you study. The second pillar is radical objectivity. Now, this isn't just about being unbiased in some passive way. No, this is an active, offensive strategy. It requires immense discipline to stay immersed in the bewildering complexity of the raw data, to fight that seductive pull of a simple, premature conclusion. It's the commitment to keep analyzing, keep calculating, keep refining, until the underlying structure reveals itself with such clarity that it just can't be denied. It's the belief that if you master the logic of the evidence, eventually, even the world's most celebrated theories will have to bend to your reality.
Okay, so a philosophy is one thing, but Franklin was a pragmatist. She translated her abstract mindset into a rigorous, repeatable, daily system. This is where we see the Franklin framework in action. This is how she took her belief in precision and forged it into a weapon, a set of concrete habits designed to systematically eliminate error and uncover the truth. Her system had 3 core parts. First up, atmospheric control. She noticed that the patterns her x-rays were making changed based on the humidity in the room. Now, instead of seeing this as an annoyance, she realized it was a critical variable. By meticulously controlling the water levels, she discovered DNA existed in 2 distinct forms, a crystalline A form and a wetter B form. This control was everything. Second, the hydration audit, which was her way of making sure her own perspective was sovereign. Just like she controlled the water around the DNA, she controlled the intellectual noise around her, refusing to be swayed by popular theories until her own data was complete. And third, analytical exhaustion. She applied rigorous mathematics to her diffraction patterns, a truly painstaking process that turned these ghostly spots on her film into precise geometric measurements. It was her way of systematically dismantling guesswork and replacing it with quantitative fact. To get this level of control, she had to completely transform her physical space. Her lab wasn't a place for just casual trial and error. It was a high-performance machine. Just try to imagine the sensory feel of this place. She designed and built custom equipment, including a microcamera that could focus a hair-thin X-ray beam, and she bubbled hydrogen gas through salt solutions to create these custom humidity chambers. Every single element of her environment was designed to isolate variables and just eliminate ambiguity. Her lab wasn't for experiments in the normal sense. It was a laboratory engineered to capture one thing, the unvarnished truth. So all of this, the tough upbringing that forged her independence, that internal fortress of logic, the uncompromising philosophy of data, and the brutally rigorous system, it was all converging on a single moment. The culmination of years of focused, isolated, and profoundly underappreciated work.
This is where the Franklin framework yields its ultimate prize, a discovery that wouldn't just change her story, but the entire future of biology. Let's just picture the scene. A single, fragile DNA fiber, taken from a calf thymus, is suspended in her custom chamber. It's being bombarded by a finely focused X-ray beam. Not for a few minutes, not even for a few hours, for over 100 continuous hours. 100 hours of patience, 100 hours of precision, 100 hours of unwavering belief in her system. All of that energy, all of that focus, all of that integrity pointed at a single invisible target. What did that extraordinary commitment finally reveal?
This, photograph 51, just look at it for a second. To us, it might look a little abstract, a ghostly symmetrical cross on a black background. But to a crystallographer and to the entire world of science, it was a revelation. It was the Rosetta Stone of life. This single image, captured in May of 1952 through her painstaking process, held a secret. It was the definitive, undeniable evidence that everyone else had been desperately and unsuccessfully searching for. You really can't overstate the power of this one image. That dark, diamond-shaped X pattern, that was the unmistakable signature of a helix. The spacing of the layered smudges on the film allowed her to calculate, with incredible precision, the dimensions of that helix. And that distinct absence of a reflection on the fourth layer line, that told her the structure wasn't a single helix, but a double helix, with the backbones on the outside. This one photograph was infinitely more powerful than 1,000 wooden models, because it wasn't a guess, it was an observation of reality. It was the ultimate payoff. And with it, Rosalind Franklin, the supposed assistant, became the uncredited architect of modern genetics.
So her story is so much more than some tragic footnote in the history of science. It's a timeless blueprint for anyone looking to create value and establish authority in a world that might overlook them. And that's where her story stops being about the past and starts being about us, right now. It offers a powerful, actionable guide for anyone who feels that their precision, their dedication to the details is being ignored.
Her struggle is a universal one, right? Maybe you're not mapping DNA in a lab, but you know the feeling of being the one who does the deep, detailed, foundational work while other people who are faster, maybe louder, more willing to guess, get all the credit. Her story completely reframes this dynamic. It teaches us that true, sustainable power isn't found in being the loudest voice in the room, but in being the one with the most reliable evidence. You're not just a technician executing someone else's vision, you are a builder of clarity. You are an architect of truth.
And that brings us to the final critical question. What is your photo 51? What's that one crucial area in your work, in your project, in your life, where assumptions and guesswork are currently running the show? What's the complex variable that everyone else is avoiding because it's just too hard to measure? What would happen if you applied the Franklin framework to it? If you implemented your own version of atmosphere control? If you practiced radical objectivity, and you pushed all the way through to analytical exhaustion? The moment you commit to that level of precision, you stop being a victim of someone else's narrative, and you start becoming the author of reality.
Let's end on this thought. Choosing to gather data, choosing to build your case on a foundation of evidence, that is not a passive technical act. It is an active, strategic choice. It's the choice to build your career, your arguments, and your life on the bedrock of reality, not the shifting sands of assumption. Rosalind Franklin's legacy teaches us that your evidence, that hard-won, unimpeachable proof you gather through precision and dedication, is nothing less than the code for your greatness.